Microphone check 1 2, testing 1 2 3. Hello, hello. How's everybody doing? Welcome back to the Sleuth Intuition channel. I'm your host, Patrick Vallejos, and we are broadcasting to the world live from Phoenix, Arizona. Today we are diving into the Idaho 4 case and the trial of Bryan Kohberger, the accused. Lots going on. Defense claims prosecution missed a discovery deadline. So they're taking a page from Lori Vallow and using that to potentially get the death penalty thrown out. Plot twist. 1 year before this incident, something very similar happened nearby. Same time, same MO. But in this case, the victim was able to, I think, Spartan kick the masked intruder, but she did report him as a short man. I think like Richard Allen, maybe even shorter, 5'3", I believe, might have even been in the range. But remember, people remember things differently, so you never know. It could be connected. Maybe he was hunched down. You know, who knows? And then also today, I think, was part 2 of a suppression hearing involving the DNA. What's up, She Warrior? All right, so let's do a quick overview of the case. This is an article from the New York Times titled Idaho Murders, What We Know. Here, let's do this. Is that better? Would you guys like to read along? I'm not going to read this whole thing. Look how long this is. You have to go back to a previous stream for that. But we can use it as a point of reference. Good to see you, Sheet Warrior. Welcome in. Okay, a man who was studying for a PhD at a nearby university is accused in the stabbing deaths of 4 undergraduates at the University of Idaho. That's by Mike Baker, Nicholas Bogle, Burroughs. Published May 22nd, 2023. Though a suspect has been arrested and charged in the brutal stabbing deaths of 4 University Idaho students in the middle of the night last fall, a series of mysteries remain about why the victims were targeted and what evidence prosecutors have against the suspect. So one thing I was talking to with my wife the other day when we were walking, I was like, hey, looking into this case or whatever. And I asked her, do you know who the BTK is? She's not a big true crime fan. Like, she reads thrillers and stuff like that, but she says, no, I don't know who that is. And I explained it, and I started talking about who he was and kind of going over the facts of his, all of his stuff. And I remembered him, his first crime, I believe, didn't he kill a family of 4? So I was wondering if maybe Bryan Kohberger was trying to emulate that. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Bryan Kohberger, 28, who was a PhD student in criminology at a nearby university at the time, has been in jail since December, when he was arrested in November 13th killings that sent fear through the normally peaceful college town of Moscow, Idaho. Seems like a nice little town. Hey, Miss Dog Lover, how are you? So I feel like Kohberger's he was trying to become a serial killer. Or maybe he already was. But I feel like this could have been a fledgling killing based off of all of the mistakes that were made. What do you guys think? What's up, Salty? Yeah, four, because that's a lot to take on for a first timer. But if you're going to beat the BTK, you're going to have to step it up, you know. Looking at things through Kohberger's eyes, he's like, I want to be a prolific serial killer. I've chosen the BTK, maybe even like maybe a copycat. What do you guys think about that? Copycat or just kind of trying things out? Because remember, he was working first kind of with, I don't know if he ever worked for a security company, but I remember the story of him installing security for a classmate and then using that to stalk her, which is terrifying. Mr. Kohberger did not enter a plea at a hearing on May 22nd, but he has said through his lawyers that he expects to be exonerated. I doubt that's going to happen. It's not looking good. His trial is scheduled to begin in October. An affidavit filed by investigators included many details about how the police had come to suspect Mr. Kohberger. Now, this is what's up for debate today, and we're going to watch, short clips. 4 clips, each about 10, 15 minutes apiece. I hope you feel better. Yeah, we're going to watch both, if that's what you mean. He didn't work for a security company. He did. Yeah. See, I corrected myself on that one. Neighbor, but no confirmation he was spying on her. I think that's the accusation. Because you got to think cause and effect, right? The reason she wanted Bryan Kohberger to help her install the cameras was because somebody was breaking into her house and moving items. I mean, we can only suspect that that was Bryan Kohberger and him, either just getting some kind of sick joy out of it or trying to discover his MO. Like, what is going to be his mode of operation? How is he going to go? He's fantasizing about murder, committing murder, learning how to be a prolific serial killer. So he's definitely planning things out, trying things, trying to figure out how to. He has the fantasy in his mind, but he doesn't know how to acquire his victim. So I feel like that's what kind of tells us who these serial killers are, about how they go about acquiring their victims. And I think ultimately that's why they end up targeting sex workers and things like that. And that's why it was dangerous to become a hitchhiker for a while, because they were looking to acquire their victims. And they said, well, I tried the kidnapping, I tried the flagging them down on a dark, scary road. That didn't work. I tried stalking the parking lots. Um, I chloroformed myself. What are some of the other stories I've heard? Shit like that, just going through the motions, and then boom, one day they figure out how they're going to do it and why. And that tells us a lot about the perpetrator. What's up, Phil Bond? What's up, Jack Johnstone? Bundy would pick up hitchhikers. Yep, that was kind of his thing. What's going on, Grunge Truck? Sorry, guys, I need a drink of water. He thought he was smart enough to get away with it. Well, they all think that they're like high IQ, but really they're not. At least typically. Sometimes there are. I think Ted Bundy might have been high IQ. Let's see. An affidavit filed by investigators included many details about how the police had come to suspect Mr. Kohberger. Have not detailed any motive for the attacks. The judge overseeing the case has imposed a gag order that has prevented the police, prosecutors, defense lawyers, and lawyers for the victims' families from discussing the case. What's up, D-Mart? All right, so let's start with the defense side. This was what was going on today in the case. Here, let me pull up everything I've gathered for today. Pretty sure I consolidated it all into this little folder. Question is, where did I put it? There it is. Oh, this is kind of funny. Let's watch this first. This one's titled, I think this is Inside Edition. Nurse went on Tinder date with Idaho suspect Bryan Kohberger. This one's kind of funny. Let's watch this.
Of Idaho murder suspect Bryan Kohberger was arrested. This woman couldn't believe her eyes.
I recognized him immediately, and my heart just sank because I couldn't believe that, like, I was face to face with this guy.
Nurse Haley Willett says they met.
Hey, what's going on, Mustang? Welcome in, everybody. I think I got everybody.
On Tinder in 2015 when they were both psych majors at Pennsylvania colleges. He took her to a movie, then insisted on escorting her to her dorm room.
I was kind of afraid to say no, so I just let him come in with me.
Then he did something she says she'll never forget.
He kept trying to tickle me, and I would ask him to stop, or I'd say, "What are you doing?" And he would be like, I'm not tickling you. And he would get very serious.
He's like trying to gaslight her. That's funny.
To say no, so I just let him come in with me.
Then he did something she says she'll never forget.
He kept trying to tickle me.
Tickle, tickle.
And I would ask him to stop, or I'd say, "What are you doing?" And he would be like, I'm not tickling.
You're tickling me. I'm not tickling you. You tickled me. Jack says, coward, lethal savage with a stun device and removed the surveillance device from scene. Key fob security pouch for the phone signal blockage. Just some thoughts of a theory. Yeah, very weird. Hey, Julia. Hey, I'll have that answer for you today. It may be nothing, but maybe after the stream, I might have a list for you. Tickle, tickle. Straight punch to the face. Boom. She's like, all right, I'll let you come in. You know, I've had enough drinks. I mean, I did hook up with you on Tinder. Whatever. And then he's just Bryan Kohberger, like some psychotic serial killer wannabe. But I thought that was funny. Here's that story that we were talking about, me and Salty.
Now to the Idaho murders case. Suspected killer Bryan Kohberger is set to be arraigned on Monday morning at 9 a.m. This comes after a grand jury indicted him on 4 counts of first-degree murder on Tuesday. And now we are learning more about the suspects from Kohberger's own family, along with another bombshell allegation claiming the suspect, Bryan Kohberger, was involved in another crime that happened before these murders. Now, this incident involved his female co-worker at Washington State University, according to a date.
Let's see. Let's go to Grunge Truck here. He says his laziness to not park far away from the crime scene got him caught. I think a lot got him caught. You know, kind of strange that you're taking your own vehicle. You think he would have thought that through. Like, you can't use your own vehicle. You definitely can't park, very close by. At the very least. And what else did he do? Oh, he used his own phone? Like, he didn't even use a burner phone. Yeah, I think that's towards the end part. You're right, Miss Dog Lover. It says, didn't she go to the bathroom and pretend to throw up? Yeah, and he was like, oh, ooh, hope you feel better. And then he kind of slipped out. Kohberger. I might even be saying it subconsciously. Kohberger. He is if he's that killer, he looks guilty. He sits there in court and stares at the judge. Remember in the Delphi case? You sit there and you continue to roll your eyes at me, Mr. Allen, Mr. Richard Allen. This motherfucker doesn't even move. He just sits there. Like Stephen McDaniel. Remember him in his interrogation? Yes. Yes. No. I feel like he's trying to stare down the judge.
Line report, someone allegedly broke into the woman's apartment and moved things around. Instead of calling police, the coworker called Kohberger, who suggested and helped her install security cameras. But the report says Kohberger was behind that break-in and used those cameras to spy on her. Let's bring in now News Nation national security contributor, former CIA officer and FBI special agent Tracy Walder. Tracy, welcome.
Yeah, I think you're right. I remember they were looking for it in all these different security camera footage. I think you're right about that.
Thank you so much for having me.
Always great to see you. So first, let's start with this new allegation, which claims Kohberger broke into his female colleague's home and how he used this incident to spy on her. What does this claim tell you about Kohberger himself?
What a freak.
So, look, we have to take all of these as just claims, right? We don't necessarily have multiple sources, reporting that this is true. If this is true, and if this indeed happened, it really does point to his sort of pattern of stalking. I have always believed, it's just my personal opinion, that, the victims in the Idaho Kings Road house were not randomly selected. I do believe that in some way.
Oh, that reminds me. That's what I was going to say earlier while I was reading the article. What is the motive? I think that's what took me down the BTK killer path. What the hell is the motive? It's just the act, right? It's a thrill kill. It's part of some kind of serial killer fantasy, which explains why he's, in criminology, just like the BTK killer was. He took criminology as well. I'm pretty sure that Kohberger was a security guard at some point. You had the BTK, was a park ranger. Yeah, definitely a thrill kill. Late night drives thinking about his day job. That's his alibi. His alibi is that he was just driving around. And today they're arguing how to get that damn knife sheath thrown out. I think they're trying to say that they violated his Fourth Amendment, I believe it is, by going through like the genealogy registry. But even the judge was like kind of kicking her ass, kicking the defense team's ass, and just kind of answering like common in a really easy common sense kind of way. He said usually people who participate in these give their consent, at the time that they provide the DNA. Like, hey, this could affect you later on down the road during an investigation. You sure you want to proceed? They sign on the dotted line like, yes. He's a distance runner from northern Pennsylvania, so he should be used to the cold, and he shouldn't be lazy. As far as serial killers go, they're not as smart as they think they are. Like, he probably even told himself, like, I need to leave my phone here, and then he probably forgot or something, and then realized after, like, oh my God.
He stalked them, whether that was digitally or physically, we don't know. And so what this could point to is a pattern of stalking, in that he was surveilling this person remotely, or in some kind of digital way. So that's what this would help point to.
And another huge claim from that Dateline report involves Kohberger's older sister. During the time of the killing, she noticed that her brother was wearing latex gloves around their parents' home and that he drove the white car police were searching for nationwide. That sister...
Yeah, come on, guys. That's a dead giveaway. We're going to end that one right there. Excuse me, Bryan Kohberger's sister. We just arrested your brother. That's why we've kind of kicked in your door and served this search warrant. Has he been doing anything weird lately? Well, he's been running around wearing latex gloves. I thought that was pretty weird. I mean, what is a jury going to think when they hear that? Like, what were you doing wearing those gloves? Crazy. And you wonder how much his dad knows. You think his dad knows anything? Like, we're just driving back and forth. Like, that was a long drive. Miss Dog Lover says, I don't know about you guys, but I always go for long drives at 4 a.m. after a long day at work. Honestly, I mean, I've never really done it that late. Maybe when I was younger. But I do like a nice drive, after you feel kind of cooped up. Just go out for a long drive, take the scenic route. Mustang says, that's what gets most of them caught, because they think they are smarter than the police. Yeah, but you already got to be an idiot to try to be a serial killer. So the fact right there that you can't control yourself and you don't have any like self-discipline, you're just fantasizing about all this weird shit. These people are extremely weird what they do behind closed doors. Like sexual fetishes, personality disorders, weird tics. What else? Rituals. What's up, Don Spain? Welcome. Says, hi, Sleuth in chat. Wasn't BTK also a security cable installer after the dog catcher? Well, the BTK was definitely security. That's how they caught him. That's how he would do his targeting. Either the people that he had installed security for, or people that were in close proximity that he could observe and kind of scope out. That's how he eventually got caught. I think all of his murders were tied through, or most of them, the majority of them, were tied through the security company. I know you were joking, Miss Dog Lover. We know. What's up, Ziggy? Mary C. That's a creepy thumbnail. That's why it's up there. because he's a creepy mofo. And that's how he was dressed that day. This is the last thing that those young people, this is the last thing they saw before they died. Imagine that shit. Fucking King Incel himself in those beady Steve Buscemi eyes just staring down at you like while you're sitting up in your bed and like, what the fuck? Like, you know, what is his motivation? It has to be a thrill kill. And based off his history and what we know about him, his profile, I guess we can call it, he seems to be a copycat killer. I mean, Ramsland, wasn't that, didn't she write the biography of the BTK killer? And now he's alone with her. It's fucking weird, guys. This is like some creepy episode of Dexter. Let's go to Julia Burns. I definitely go for long drives during my breaks at work. It helps me relax and listen to music. It's also at some odd hours sometimes, and I always take the same route. Hope I'm not creeping people out. No, because I know a lot of people that do that. I used to do that. I just haven't done it lately, you know. Oh, yeah, Mary. Because even if, let's say you have a gun, if somebody's like already standing over you with a knife and you try to reach for something, maybe a weapon, boom, they got you. Steve Buscemi is a bona fide gremlin. Not a mogwai, but a damn gremlin. Okay, let's see here. Should we do we'll start with the defense. And I believe this is today's suppression hearing.
In one's DNA that society is willing to recognize. And I think I'd talked to the court a little bit about the things that happened in this case that were super secret.
How's the
I
sound?
think we've gotten to the point where we were talking, and this goes to recognizing an expectation of privacy when there's all of this secrecy.
Don says, and Kohberger studied BTK and then installed security camera in a female student's apartment. Yep, we talked about that at the very beginning. Looks like a crazy. Watch him. He's looking at the judge and he doesn't move. It's almost like he's trying to intimidate him. Julia says he's also an asshole, so I don't feel bad about calling him a gremlin. Is he? Betsy Ross, welcome in. Perfect. To wake with that face in your face, OMG. Yeah, imagine. Jack says BK day job was serial killers. That's right. Yeah, it makes you really wonder about Dr. Ramsland. Like, do you think she had any knowledge about what he might have been into or what he's capable of? I'm assuming there's some fledgling killings out there that we don't know of or some type of attempts. Thank you, Mustang.
Surrounding it. We had gotten to the FBI where the SNP profile was twice as big as that from Othram. And then the FBI went into databases that violate the Department of Justice interim policy. You heard a lot about that Department of Justice interim policy, and that policy it's on page 6 of that particular exhibit that the court has. It says that they're not to go into databases that aren't allowed. And they did that. The court has that in another exhibit.
How's that a constitutional violation?
Your Honor, it goes to privacy.
Don't suppress for contractual violations or even statutory violations.
I'm not suggesting that we do that. I'm suggesting that that's information that's pertinent to this court in making a very important decision as to whether somebody's Fourth Amendment rights were violated, as well as Article 1, Section 17 of the Idaho Constitution. The purpose of offering that information is because there's a policy, so there's there's a recognized expectation of privacy in what's contained in a SNP. In a SNP at all, there has to be a warrant to search these types of things.
That sounds
annoying. And there
wasn't.
There would be no need to have any policy if nobody cared about this. The court heard about the different IGG databases that changed their rules in terms of use after a different case used IGG to solve it because people don't expect to have their DNA searched.
That was the point of my question about whether or not Mr. Kohberger's DNA was in any of those databases. In other words, did he submit his DNA and said, I don't want law enforcement to look at it?
Your Honor, I don't think that that's the way the question should be looked at. I think the question should be looked at.
She's like, no, Judge, no.
Is in the way that we always look at warrantless searches.
Got to be a standing.
This is funny.
Your Honor, we're here because the state has alleged that a single piece of evidence ties Mr. Kohberger to this case. They've alleged that there's a knife sheath that has DNA that they allege matches Bryan Kohberger. He's now been incarcerated for 2 years, facing capital murder. I'm not sure, unless we're shifting the burden to me, what else I can say.
Listen to this burn.
Well, you have a burden of showing that the items ought to be suppressed.
Oh.
This is a warrantless search. There's no justification for this search.
How about that?
Assuming a warrant is required for this type of inquiry.
This is when I realized how difficult it is to be a defense attorney. She's doing a hell of a job, and it's like there's just not much there. Very difficult to defend this creepy guy sitting back there. She's trying her best.
Well, Your Honor, we think it is. And we think it is based on case law, third-party doctrine case law. That's Carpenter. Thinking about cell phones, that's the Riley case. If you have a cell phone that gets taken at an arrest out of a car, a subsequent warrant to search the cell phone is required. So we think a warrant was required for these subsequent searches. And there was no warrant in this case.
What is that? Antisocial personality disorder? What's up, Stephanie? Welcome in. How you doing? Cindy, welcome. Maybe she can get Westerman's phone number. Take a book out of that page, or take a page out of that book. Sorry, I'm a little dyslexic today. Betsy says, which warrant are they talking about? This was, I believe, the genetic genealogy warrant. I think the FBI went into the database and found the match. And she's trying to say, well, she's basically trying to say that they're violating his rights by doing it that way without a warrant. Basically, if you give up your DNA voluntarily, that doesn't mean that, hey, everybody should be able to come and grab it whenever they want. She's saying, like, that doesn't mean that it's just up for grabs. And the judge is saying, well, typically when we have somebody's DNA, it's because they signed off on it. But I was thinking to myself, like, that's fucking bullshit, because how many times do investigators pick up a cigarette butt or offer suspects a drink and then take the DNA off the can or off the cup? So what would be the difference?
There's an expectation of privacy.
I struggle with, I struggle, to be frank, and where you're going to have to try to convince me, I guess, is I struggle with the idea that DNA left at a crime scene, that there's any expectation of privacy, by someone who leaves DNA at a crime scene, that DNA can't be, as you say, searched without a warrant to establish identity?
Well, Your Honor, I don't think any of us can go out of our houses without leaving.
Holy shit. Jack says cardboard cutout Bryan Kohberger. Literally, tell me, every time he moves, you guys have to take a shot. All you college folks out there who are watching.
And DNA all over the place.
And not go to a crime scene.
Right? This is a game you would play at an AA meeting.
Question of how something gets somewhere, that's the subject of the trial.
Now he's staring at the judge again.
I think the Carpenter case is really instructive for the court here. And that case was about, it was about third party with cell towers. And there was a concurring opinion in that case.
D-Mart, that's a good example. Rex Hewerman, and that was very recent. That was out of New York. So I wonder if there's different state laws. But D-Mart says they took the Long Island serial killer guy's pizza crust that he threw out. Yeah, I think it was Domino's, right?
I think that's instructive. We leave DNA everywhere. If you carry a cell phone and it uses the towers, there can be a trail of where you went.
Everywhere?
I'm sorry?
Don't we leave fingerprints everywhere?
We do leave fingerprints everywhere, but I would say, Your Honor, that things like your movement.
She's like, yeah, dumbass, we do leave fingerprints everywhere.
Cell towers, the contents of your cell phone, those are really personal things. That's how you carry out your business. That's how you go, you drive your car to go to the doctor, your cell phone's heading on those towers. DNA is even more personal than that. The tests are so different than they used to be now. It can pick up all kinds of information. It takes very little DNA. DNA lives on surfaces a lot longer than fingerprints live on surfaces.
Let's go.
Without more, they're not much of an indication of anything. There's a warrant requirement to protect people from unreasonable search.
Like, she's trying so hard. She's like, I just don't know what, she's trying to find that angle, right? But the judge is like, you're kind of like, hey, you're crashing and you're burning. It's rough.
Searches. And that's what we're asserting here. There's so much information contained in your DNA, and you can't stop from shedding that when you go out of your house. None of us can. To be able to have that searched without a warrant could put anybody in jeopardy. There's no privacy left if that's going to be the standard. You put it in public so it can be searched. That can't be the standard. That would erode the Fourth Amendment. Our position is that there is an expectation of privacy that society is willing to accept. Our position is that there's case law.
There is some kind of like blurry lines there between like DNA. It's fairly a new thing. So they need to figure out what the laws are and how it relates to our rights as citizens, right? Like, where does it all lie? I think there's some fuzziness going on there.
That supports this. Maybe not exactly directly on point, but the court talked about.
You know what? I was thinking to myself before the live stream, Stephanie, and Stephanie's comment reads like this. His DNA should not be on the sheath in that house. And I agree, but imagine, like, what if he just happened to be driving by and somehow somebody that he knows handed him a knife, or he was in a store or something. He just, some weird way his thumbprint got on there. And then somehow the killer left it at the crime scene. Or somehow it's not related. I mean, what are the odds of that, right? But imagine if something like that happened and you were convicted of murder. I feel like you would need a little bit more. It's damning. Like, the odds are astronomical. But still, I mean, it's that what if, you know? And I think that's what she's trying to create.
One of the cases that we cited, that's similar. It's out of Washington. In that case, it keyed on whether the database was a voluntary law enforcement can search this or not. In this situation, that's not the case. You know from the exhibit you have and from the testimony that you heard that the FBI went into 2 databases that they weren't permitted to search. So if the court wants to go clear to that extreme, and the court shouldn't, the court should look at the Fourth Amendment. The court should look at expectation of privacy. The court should look at the 3 places there was a warrant required and it wasn't given. But if the court wants to go all the way down to whether or not there was a database search.
Honestly, Julia says there's no judge that wouldn't sign a search warrant to DNA found at a crime scene. I understand she's trying to do her job, but come on. If there was a quadruple homicide, DNA is going to be tested. Here in a minute, I think he quotes that verbatim. The judge literally says that to her.
Searched where the people consented to have their DNA searched. Our case is different. The FBI went into 2 other databases and searched those. There was nothing else happening until that happened. And it's instructive, I think, and important for the court to think about
exactly,
how
Cindy.
secretive this all was.
I think it's most defense attorneys say that you shouldn't put the defendant on the stand, on the witness stand. But I think for the jury, if I was on a jury, I would need that. That's something I would need. It would be, if you're innocent, I need you to fucking say it. Like all these people we're sitting in this room and everybody's pointing their fingers at you. They're telling me and they're trying to convince me. And you have this small group of people who are defending you and it's their job to defend you. They don't know you. You know what I mean? They don't know what the hell's going on. They don't know who you are as a person. I want to look in your eyes and I want you to tell me what happened that day, what you were doing, where you were at. And I feel like innocent people should be able to do that. But for some reason, some lawyers, will tell their clients like, hey, we don't want you to do that.
We are months from trial and we are learning things about how the government identified Bryan today in open court when we've asked for those things. There's a reason why there's so much secrecy. That's because there's a violation of privacy rights. That's why there's so much secrecy. Your Honor, this is an extremely important motion, and the court is going to decide whether we do have any expectation of privacy left or not. The IGG evidence in this case should absolutely be suppressed.
Customize.
Alrighty, let's hear what the prosecution side had to say.
Individuals who are utilizing these databases, and we're talking about millions of them, are willingly sharing their information with each other, with millions of other people.
Isn't there a subset that says, but I don't want these people to look at it?
In some of the data,
FBI, as I understand the evidence, then says, okay, we agree, we won't search those ones.
So I'll address that part, but on the database piece, the issue is that no one sharing this information with millions of other people could have a reasonable expectation of privacy. The test for that isn't, do they have a reasonable expectation of privacy against law enforcement?
Oh, here's a good comment by Shelley. A few years ago, Ancestry sent me a thing to check if I agreed to allowing law enforcement to ever use my Ancestry DNA. Like what CC Moore uses Ancestry for. Yes. And I think that's the argument here.
It's against the public writ large. So, for example, we cited in our brief 3 different cases where Idaho's appellate courts have found people have given up a reasonable expectation of privacy in information that was shared with a single company. And it was shared with that company just so they could get the service from that company. Here, we're talking about people sharing it not just with the company, but with millions of other people, because sharing it is the purpose of providing it to the database. So regardless of what the FBI did or didn't do in terms of violating the terms of service, no one has a reasonable expectation.
Is it different if they share it with the company and it's obtained by lawful process from that company versus going in the back window and taking it?
No, Your Honor, because right now what we're asking is not reasonableness of the search. Right now what we're asking is there even a reasonable expectation of privacy? And so the fact that no one has a reasonable expectation of privacy in those databases means that even if the FBI violated those terms of service, no one has a Fourth Amendment right to complain. And certainly Mr. Kohberger doesn't. He has not asserted factually or through evidence that he was a customer to one of these databases. And maybe that changes the case if he were, but he's not. He's not even claiming that. He's not even asserting it. Now, I do want to address the second part of the court's question about the FBI has indicated that they wouldn't do this. I believe that's a reference to the policy we've been discussing, the interim policy by the DOJ. I certainly do not speak for the Department of Justice. I do not work for the FBI. I'm speaking for the state of Idaho, but I can read a document. And if you look at the policy in footnote 1, it clearly says this interim policy does not impose any legal limitations on otherwise lawful investigative or prosecutorial activities or techniques utilized by the Department of Justice or limit the prerogatives, choices, or decisions available to or made by the department in its discretion. In other words, their first problem is they're relying on a policy at all. The U.S. Supreme Court has said,
okay, I think what the defense is really trying to do is set a precedent, right? She's trying to say that even though in some cases they have been using this type of DNA and this type of information through genetic genealogy, but she's trying to say that just because it's part of some policy doesn't supersede the Constitution. And I think he's doing his best to explain why she's wrong. And she's using other cases to prove that.
Policies do not equal Fourth Amendment violations. Their second problem is it's a circular argument. The policy doesn't say you cannot do any of these things. It's saying best case scenario, you're not going to do these things.
Well, if you were interpreting this as a matter of contract, wouldn't you have a problem in the sense that on the one hand it says don't do this, and on the other hand you've got a more general sort of catch-all that says, but we're not really meaning anything we say?
No, I don't think there's a problem interpreting that at all. I think the problem is they are putting way too much weight on this policy as if it's somehow the law. And it's not. It's indicating, and we heard testimony today about best practices and what those mean. This is indicating best practices, but very clearly stating we are not limiting the Department of Justice to have to follow what's in this document as long as it's not limited by the law. And they're trying to use a violation of this policy or an alleged violation of this policy to say that they violated the law. It's circular reasoning. But despite all of that, the U.S. Supreme Court has said a policy violation isn't sufficient. Even the Department of Justice, as powerful as they are, they don't get to rewrite the Fourth Amendment by changing this policy.
It's kind of like going to a township and they have their own laws there or bylaws, and if you break one of those laws but somehow it doesn't go with the Constitution or any of the amendments or something like that, they can't really enforce it on you. It's almost like it doesn't really exist.
No, I do want to address the defense is they're trying to pick and choose what they believe
kind of like a mask mandate type situation.
The searches are throughout this chain, and what they're leaving out repeatedly is where this DNA started. Where did the chain start? Well, it started at a quadruple homicide, at a crime scene. There is no case law anywhere that the state could find, and the defense has not cited any to suggest that there is a reasonable expectation of privacy in DNA found at a crime scene. And I want to talk about the Davis case, Your Honor, because it actually cuts against the defense. Davis is the case where it was a very unique set of...
Welcome in, Beckles.
Facts. There was an investigation into a shooting. An officer went to the hospital, and when he went into the victim's room, he saw a bag of clothing. He seized that clothing under the plain view exception to the warrant requirement. So the clothing wasn't abandoned. This was an exception to the warrant requirement. Later on, this individual who was a victim now becomes a suspect, and they have this DNA and they test it. And the Fourth Circuit said, no, you can't do that. You can't take it because he's a victim and then later use it against him as a suspect. That is nothing at all like what we have here. And in fact, if this court looks at the district court opinion that was affirmed by the Fourth Circuit, It expressly states nothing about this holding is indicating that the government needs to get a search warrant for crime scene DNA.
So, I mean, let's save the last 10 minutes for a discussion, but I think you guys get the point of what they're trying to do, and they're not going to be successful at it. We've seen this case after case, trial after trial. It's typical. It's kind of like if your defense attorney wasn't doing these certain things, you should be upset that they're not at least attempting. Beckel says, I just wish the defense would just come out and just say what they want to say. I think they think he was framed, such as how did the sheath get there with his DNA? Yeah, exactly. He would have to have been framed. It's either him or he's being framed. The question is, why would anybody frame him? Let's see, what else was I going to show you? Oh, here we go. Here's an interesting story.
This morning, a new twist in the investigation of University of Idaho murder suspect Bryan Kohberger.
Oh my God.
Body camera footage obtained by ABC News shows police responding to an alleged home invasion 1 year before the murders, less than 10 miles from the off-campus home where 4 University of Idaho students were stabbed to death. The woman tells police it was about 3:30 a.m. when a masked intruder entered her bedroom in Pullman, Washington, holding a knife.
I heard my door open and I looked over and someone was wearing a ski mask and had a knife. And so I
ski mask
kicked
and a knife
out of their stomach and screamed super loud, and they flew back into my closet and then ran out my door and up the stairs.
According to the police report, she said the suspect was silent the whole time. And while one of her roommates quickly called police, officers found no suspect or evidence. Months later, Kohberger was arrested for the stabbing deaths of Kaylee Gonzalez, Madden Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin in Moscow, Idaho, where the killer also allegedly had a knife, wore a mask, entered the...
Let's go to Beckles real quick. It says, okay, why would anyone frame him? I think because he would be easy to frame. Just look at the comments of people and how they talk about his looks and how he acts. That's just not based in reality. It's not just somebody framing him. You need to profile somebody who's going to commit a quadruple homicide, and then include Bryan, all this hard work and research about who Bryan Kohberger is and why he would be a good patsy. That doesn't make any sense at all. What makes more sense is this creepy incel guy who may be responsible for other weird crimes previous to this. Criminology, studying with Ramsland, acting just like the BTK, right? Very similar type crime. I think the ski mask and holding a knife, right? That sounds exactly like this incident.
Home in the early morning hours and was silent as he left. 13 days later, Kohberger was named a person of interest in the Pullman case.
When you look at the Idaho murders,
right,
one of the things that
and then he was named a person of interest
almost immediately is, are there other cases in the area that might have some similarities? For example, fingerprints, DNA, hair samples, anything that you could either file.
That's a good point. Julia says if someone were to frame him, they would have to know his car was in that area and stalking the home several times. Shit, maybe that's why they picked him. Let's play devil's advocate. Let's say somebody is targeting those girls and sees that they're being stalked. It's playing out like a Hollywood movie script.
Biologically or genetically or fingerprint wise, link the suspect to that particular burglary.
But according to the report, the woman described the Pullman suspect as 5'3" to 5'5". Kohberger is 6 feet tall. The report also reveals Kohberger, a Pennsylvania resident, was not yet enrolled at Washington State University, nor was he visiting the campus as a prospective graduate student. Pullman police tell ABC News Kohberger is no longer a person of interest in the break-in, adding, "We have no reason or evidence to believe he was involved in this burglary at this time."
That's funny.
The case is now closed, but remains unsolved. Now,
that's a good way to put it. Mental gymnastics. There you go, Beckles. Mental gymnastics, according to Betsy Ross, and I agree. All right, guys, I think that's going to do it. We are going live a little bit later in the day. We will be diving into Abby and Libby's case at Adelphi. So if you guys are interested. There's a lot going on right now with that case. So Beckel says, I disagree with Julia. I think there is many reasons his car could be in that area. Well, the thing is, you would have to set up somebody that doesn't even live in Moscow and then get them to drive somewhere near where you're plotting a murder. Like, you would have to lure them out there or somehow guide them out there. And that would mean that, cause and effect. Bryan Kohberger would have to say, well, I got a call, like a mysterious call. I got set up, I got catfished. But he didn't say anything like that. So you can't have this guy's knife sheath with his thumbprint on it and then timing him perfectly when he decides to go, way out to Moscow, Idaho. And then you commit the murder, leave the sheath at exactly, the planets align at exactly the right time. Just doesn't work that way. Betsy Ross says, I didn't come up with it. Laugh out loud. Gray did. Oh, Gray Hughes. Pro burgers. That's funny. I'm not a fan of Gray, but that's good. That's a good one. Julia says, I'm sure that law enforcement would have asked Bryan Kohberger for alibis the nights his car was stalking and also if anybody knew where he was at that time. But his car didn't have the front license plate. And watching the questioning today for Mallory and Payne, how come it's so easy for them to not recall and don't remember and they don't know who was working on what, other than they kept saying FBI, FBI. That's just how it goes, You can't remember every little thing. That's why you have to document, as much as possible. Let the record speak for itself. How many white launchers are running around at 3 a.m. near the scene with missing license plate? I think the better question is, where the hell did he put that knife? I think he went so far out of his way, either to maybe try to help shape the alibi, but right where he kind of stops and turns around and starts coming back, there's a river right there. I'm sure they search there, but I think people that live around there should be out there kind of searching with metal detectors and things, because he could have just kind of flung it out the window. Doesn't mean he couldn't have been set up by somebody else. I don't know. I mean, you just got to really think it through, Try to debunk yourself. For real, for real. What's up? All right, guys, you are catching the tail end of this, the caboose. So we're going to get out of here. But if you want to hang out again in just about 3 hours, we'll be discussing the Delphi murders. All of you who caught this live stream, thank you so much. And all you moderators for keeping the chat chill, thank you so much. Big shout out to the Sleuth Crew members and my donors. Every little bit helps and you guys make this possible. So big shout out to all of you and all my subscribers and anybody who's just lurking or checking us out. Hopefully you'll hang out and stick with us. Otherwise, we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.